Hello and welcome to the challenge, Calling Out Your Book. We are so excited to give you a bonus interview with Aurora Gregory. And her specialty is she's a business strategist for authors who want to speak on stages. So for any of you that want to speak on stages or have a platform, and for those that are hiding, like Gideon, that God wants to bring you out into the stage, this interview is for you. So thank you so much, Aurora, for being here today.
I am so excited
to have you. Yay.
I'm excited too. I love authors and I love speaking. So I'm excited to be able to talk with you today and talk about authors, why authors belong on stages.
Yay. Well, I just thought maybe if you want to give them a little bit of a background on where you come from and how you help people, that would be awesome.
Absolutely. I have been working with speakers for probably close to 25 years.
Wow.
My actual first time on stage was as a 14-year-old. I was a finalist in a speech contest when I was in the 8th grade. I didn't win that contest, but I did learn how powerful it is to be behind a microphone or at a podium or on a stage and having everyone's attention as you tell a powerful story. And so that was the beginning for me. And after that, I just always kind of fell in love with working in that speaking space. I'd done it professionally. And then, like I said, about 25 years ago, kind of fell into a particular, kind of area where I got a chance to, help speakers get on stage, actually help them coordinate and craft their pitches so that they could, showcase themselves with event planners, conferences, industry events, and give them the best chance to land on stage and share their knowledge. So I don't think I could love it anymore. And authors hold a really special place in my heart. About 5-6 years ago, I published my own book, showcasing all the strategy that I've developed in how to create great stage pitches. And so I know the excitement of, first of all, I know the hard work of writing a book.
Yeah, that's so true.
And then the excitement of being able to launch it and put it out into the world.
Your book, baby.
Exactly.
It's interesting in your story how even as a 14-year-old, you loved it, because most 14-year-olds, middle school, high school, they're terrified. That's that.
Well, it's funny. I tell a story when I get a chance to kind of tell the deeper story, and I always blame my speaking career on Mr. Johnson, who was my 8th grade social studies teacher. I really didn't want to do the contest. It was sponsored by the local Kiwanis chapter in our town, and he had picked out a few students that he wanted to put forward to participate in the contest, and I happened to be one of them. And I really pushed back, and he really wouldn't let me say no. He actually made me do it. And I was the one student out of our school that moved forward, and I was one of the 2 finalists at the end. So I blame Mr. Johnson for all of this. And I remember a lot of the experiences going through all of that. I remember all the nerves. I even remember the one thing I did at the moment when I lost the contest, but I've never forgotten how incredible it was to put that speech together, to practice, to get on stage, and to, week after week, share my presentation and watch people just kind of lean into the story that I was telling them.
That is so awesome. I love that. And Amanda, I know that one of the things I love about you is you help people find their voice when they've been shut up and when people have put them down or whatever, that sometimes in that process we lose our voice. So I think that's so important that, you bring that to the table, is helping people find their voice. Because I think it's one thing to find your voice and then another thing to speak on stage. And I think sometimes we're wrestling with both of those. What do you think about that, Amanda?
I do. And it's almost as if, Aurora, for the authors, a lot of them are hiding, and they start, and my motto is just get your voice out, just start speaking. And then as you continue to grow, then that might be getting them to you, because a lot of times we're so nervous to even start. And I think there's something about the breakthrough of your voice, of actually starting it, no matter what it looks like. I remember years ago when I started to go live, I'm like, wow, I have that video to remember. And that, just like anyone else. So I am almost that in between of, okay, we're scared. We're going to start just using your voice and then continuing. And that's what I encourage them. It doesn't matter. Just whatever you need to do, just go live and we'll cheer you on. And that's what they do in the group. And some people are so nervous, but just the fact that their voices are heard. So
It's
yeah,
so true. And I tell speakers, especially those that struggle with a lot of nervousness or maybe anxiety, we all know, we've all heard the story that, public speaking is one of the top fears of most people in the world. But I always try to remind people that when you step out on a stage, even if you're doing something that's a little bit smaller and more intimate, say like a podcast interview, every audience is for the speaker. No one comes to hear someone speak and says, "Oh, I hope this is a great train wreck. I can't wait." They're really there. They're here. They want to hear a great speaker, a great presentation. They're looking to hear. They're for you. And so I always just try to encourage people to remember that even if it's not your best performance, even if you have the dreaded coughing attack on stage, which I have experienced, you need to go ahead and manage it, give yourself the time to kind of reset. I had to step away from the microphone and just cough it out and come back and pick up where you left off. Your audience is with you. They are supportive of you, and they're not going to think anything less of you if your performance or your presentation at times is a little bumpy. So don't let those nagging fears, don't let the enemy kind of get in your ear and say, don't do it. It'll be a disaster, because it's not true. It's just not true.
That is such a good point. I love that point. So what would you say are the top 3 ideas or tips that you would give authors who are starting out and wanting to talk on stages? Or I can even back that up one level to say that God's okay with you speaking on stages, because I maybe even some people have this false humility of, I want to shrink back and be small and think that that's being humble.
I think that's so true. And I think especially, those of us who follow the Lord, who follow Christ, there is that tension that we live in between wanting to make sure that we stay humble while at the same time feeling the call on our lives to tell our stories. And I think we have to remember that, that feeling of pride is a condition of the heart. God will judge it, and he'll let us know if we're trying to approach the stage or to tell our story with wrong motive. But if our motive in our heart is to tell our story to help someone else, to free them from something similar, to give glory to the Lord for what it is that he's done in your life, then that is incredibly acceptable to him. So I just want to, chime in with that. I certainly understand the tension, but don't let the enemy steal from you or steal from others that could be encouraged by you by shrinking back because you don't think you should. So I'll leave that there. But, in terms of some of my top 3, tips or ideas about how to pursue stages or what it is, how you should go about it. One of the things that's really important is to make sure that you're clear exactly who the audience is for your story. So you're all, writing a book. You may have a very general idea. It's like, oh, it's for other women. It's a book for women. And I want to just challenge you to just kind of narrow that down a little bit more. Is it women who've had a certain type of experience? Is it women of a certain age? Is it women who are married with children? Is it women who've experienced divorce? Be very narrow, because one of the things that you'll need to do as you pursue stages is really work to find out, where do those women gather? What events do they go to? What Facebook groups are they in? What podcasts do they listen to? And as you narrow it down, it makes it much easier to find out where those women are, so that then you can join those groups and be a part of them and find opportunities to be able to share and tell your story. So be very clear, be very specific on the type of women or the exact group that you're wanting to serve.
And then I just want to say yes to that. Yes, 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 exclamation point, because we talked about that in the challenge, and knowing your who and niching down as tight as you can. And I think in the Christian community, it's like, we want to reach everybody because
Exactly.
God loved everybody. And it's harder in the Christian community because we're taught that. So
Well,
thank you for sharing, because I think
it's really true. And I think that, in marketing and the work that we do to try to promote books, we say, well, if you're for everyone, you're for no one, right?
Mhm.
And even Jesus, as he talked about who he came for. I came for these people. He was really clear about who he came for. So the one that we follow, the one who is the model for our lives, in a lot of ways gives us those clues as we execute the ministry that he's given us through our story, through the journey he's brought us through. We can look to him, to how he did things, to give us those tips and clues on like, okay, well, I want to do it like him. Because what greater role model do we have than we have in him? So be very clear about that. And then once you have a lot of clarity around who your audience is, it becomes a lot easier to search out where those groups of women are. Now, for a lot of us, it's going to be naturally in some of our church communities, but there are certainly live events, there are virtual events, there are podcasts that you can now go out and search. So, and really in this case, like as a starting point, Google is your friend. You can go to Google and type in podcasts plus the group of women that you serve, podcasts plus moms of young children, and it will be returned to you more information, more listings than you could possibly hope to get through in a lifetime, more than likely. But that'll give you an idea of, okay, these are the types of podcasts they're listening to. Do the same thing for conferences. All of that will come up. And that's how you're going to start to build a list of the types of events that you could potentially pitch as a speaker, to ask to be a speaker on those stages, or even to be able to go and know what events you should be attending so that you can meet more women that are in the group that you want to serve. So that would be tip number 2.
Okay, I have a question with that.
Sure.
So usually if I Google, I would just say podcast and then young moms, but
Mhm.
you use the word plus. Is there a reason
So-
why you use the word plus in the Google search?
So I'll either use plus, or I'll use the actual plus sign, or we can do it exactly the way that you did. Sometimes it's not required. Sometimes Google will return a different set of results when you use different terms in between. So I would use any of the ways that we've suggested it. And then as you scroll down, Google will give you a little box that says, people also searched for this. And it'll give you more results that you can take a look at. They'll give you other ways that other people who are like you have been searching for those same types of things. What were their search words? And it'll give you some additional clues. A lot of times finding speaking engagements or podcasts to get to host on, or even live or live or virtual summits to participate in. It's a little bit like being, you've got to be a little bit of a detective and do some really good searching. Once you find your search, then it's almost like you found the little thread and you pull it, and all of a sudden you're going to get a whole lot of information, more than you'll probably know, but you'll start to build connections and relationships that will lead to other speaking opportunities.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for that. That's a good tip. I learned something today.
Me too.
Yay. Okay.
Third thing I would suggest is you are either in the process or you've just finished your book. You've written at this point thousands of words. Now what you need is a couple hundred words to be able to really very succinctly capture for someone what it is that you talk about from the stage. I call it the tight 200. It's a tight 200 words that describes or explains what it is that you talk about from the stage. It should start with the title of your talk or your presentation, which may or may not be the same title as your book. My signature talk for many years was the title of my book. And then just recently, I've kind of reimagined that talk and I've actually changed the title. But it should start with your title, and then it's 200 words that describes what you can talk about. And it should include 3 takeaways that your audience will receive, something that you have to impart to them as part of your time on stage, is what the audience will learn. once you have that tight 200 words, you're going to file it away in a Google Doc that you can find at a moment's notice. And then pitching stages, having the opportunity to apply to speak, to fill out a call for speakers, which is how a lot of events kind of publicize that they're looking for speakers, or even pitching a podcast will be all just about as easy as a cut and paste. You just copy those 200 words and you plop it in to whatever form you have to fill out or email that you need to send to a host or to an event planner. Once you do that, you'll be able to pitch events pretty easily and pretty regularly. But it can be a bit challenging to narrow all the words of your story into something that's very tight and very succinct. So give yourself some space and room to do that. 200 words doesn't sound like very many, and it's not, but believe it or not, you can actually give a great description of what you can share from the stage in that amount of space.
And would you say, a couple questions, like I'm the queen of hooks and titles. Those are like my favorite things. And Amanda knows this. So it's like, I love playing and, playing with the titles and the hooks. So the hook is really important for
Very.
that, because that's the first thing that's going to draw them in. It's you have to think about it as the title.
Exactly.
And so what I hear you saying is that your title of your book does not have to match the title of your speech, although it could.
It could, you may have constructed your title in such a way that it does have that hook nature to it, right? Sherry and Amanda, we both have, marketing in our backgrounds. This kind of tight 200 words is in itself almost like a mini sales page where the title is the hook. And then we've got, the different pieces that, get formed out of the sentences we make out of these 200 words. But I think what you want to be sure of is, let's just say that your title of your book, say it's what we would call like an A+B title. It's got maybe a creative piece and then a more practical functional description part of the title. All of that may be too long for the title of a speech. So you might have to consider amending it or editing it so that it fits. A title of a speech really shouldn't be any longer than 12 or 13 words. Much longer than that, and it's too much for a lot of reasons. It's too much. So you want to shoot for 12 to 13 words. And then, there might also be some other reasons why you would change it. There might be a great sentence out of your book that really captures and would make a great title for a speech. There might be any number of places where you might draw some creative energy that is very complementary to your book.
That's a good idea. Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot. Oh, she's like, uh-oh. Well, you're a speech person, so you should be good with it.
I should be able to do this.
You should be able to do this. Wah, 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 wah. Can you give us some samples of some really good hooks for some speeches?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So let's see. One of my favorites is actually one for it's for an education conference. It was a teacher who was going to be speaking at an education conference, and her title, make sure I get it right, her title was "How I Cured Nose Picking with Duct Tape and Other Educational Strategies for the Classroom." One of my favorites. I didn't write it, but I probably discovered it probably 5 or 6 years ago, and it has never ceased to be one of my favorites. So that's one that I really love. There was another one from a conference that I was at in February, and it was magic wands and pixie dust, how to create magically irresistible offers. This was a marketing conference. It happened to be at Disney World. And so she kind of tied in the whole idea of, the Magic Kingdom and all of the kind of the fairy kind of nature that can come up at Disneyland. She really loved that. I'm trying to think of one more.
While you do that though, I'm going to just make one statement in there. She really had to stay away from Disneyland words.
Yes, she did.
Because they were trademarked and copyrighted. So she had to say a magical wand, which, you knew could be representing Tinkerbell or something, but you couldn't say Tinkerbell probably. So you have to be careful
You do.
about that in your titles, I would think.
You absolutely do. And yet, kind of those creative stretches, I think are kind of good for us. The title, because it's that hook, I always say it's this overlooked piece of copy that actually could take you more time to work on than the 200 words in the paragraph. You've got a lot more space to work there. But that title, Sherry, you called it so perfectly. It's the first thing anyone is going to see, whether it's the event planner. Well, what do they talk about? It's the first thing they're going to see. If you're selected to speak at a conference and they, put everything together in an agenda, the people that are attending, the first thing they do when they check in is like, okay, well, what are the sessions? Who's going to be speaking? What are the titles? One of the things that drives me kind of crazy when I look at
Sorry.
at an agenda for a conference is when I look at all the titles, and every title starts with how to.
Oh, yeah.
And I call it being trapped in the land of how to. Now, how to is great for things like search engine optimization and all those kinds of things, but that's not what we're trying to accomplish at an event. We're trying to intrigue people and get them to lean in and be interested in our talk. So I'm always looking for the titles that are super interesting, have some creative flair, and more often than not, when you do that, your session, your presentation, it stands out even before you stepped on stage, because more than likely everyone else is starting with the words how to. So you want to be able to build that intrigue. I like to tell people that your presentation starts before you step on stage. It starts when you really create that pitch copy, because you're making a promise to your audience. And so when they come and you step on stage, then your goal at that point is to deliver on the promise that you made when you told them what it is that you're going to talk about. And actually that makes your life really easy, because if you get accepted, you don't have to panic about and start to think like, okay, well, what do I talk about now? You already told them. You just have to use that as your framework and as your outline. Use that as your guide, and you're going to be golden.
Oh, such good advice. And I love how you said it's either got to be intriguing or it's got to be a hook. And I know, Amanda, your book, we really worked on your title, and I think yours might be an example of where you can use your title and your speech similarly. So what you want to share your title and?
Sure. Silent No Longer, Finding My Voice After Complex Trauma.
It's great. You're so intrigued, like, okay, well, if she's silent no longer, that means that at one point she was silent. Like, it makes me want to lean in. It's like, okay, well, what kept her silent?
Yeah.
And how did she get out of that? Like, that's, I think, what we want with all of the pieces of copy that we're writing, as we draw people to our books, and by extension, we draw people to us on stage, is we want people to lean in. Everything from, your pitch copy, your book title, to your bio, you want it to draw people in. God has blessed us with an incredible journey. For a lot of us, he's rescued us out of incredible situations. I want to be able to tell what he's done. And so by bringing that creative energy and those, great hooks and combining words together in a way that makes people lean in, I get a chance to do that. And I would love to see, all of these, all of the authors that you're going to be working with, take on that same kind of excitement about the book that they're writing, that they get to tell the story of what he's brought them through.
I love it. I love it. And I think, Amanda, you're just such a beautiful compliment to this, to help women get to the point, or any author, male or female, like get to the point of being able to get on a stage. I think you're kind of the precursor for that. And so I just thank you for being on board to even help them come out and do a live. I remember my first live, honest to God, I went on and I was like so freaked out that I pre-recorded it and then I posted it. I couldn't even go live. I mean, that was my very first live. So like we all start somewhere.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I have one last question for you, or one of the questions, Aurora. There's a lot of authors that think they can just hide behind their book and that's all. They don't really know why. And I know we've talked about this, but what's the link between the author and the speaker? If there was one key statement about that, what would it be to help them break through that?
Well, I'm a big believer that that speakers should be authors and authors should be speakers. If we've gone to all of the trouble, put all of the blood, sweat, tears, sometimes a lot of tears, to write a book, the goal is to be able to put it in the hands of others. It's a magical, incredible moment to hold your own book in your hand.
Yeah.
But it's otherworldly, really, when you watch other people pick up your book and want to read it. One of the things that we do when we elect to take the next step as authors and become speakers and step out onto that stage is we help to cast a great light on the book itself. When we share a portion of our story on stage, we create, hopefully we're creating a great connection with our audience. And invariably, they want to be able to take a part of that story with them. They want to take a part of that encouragement, that motivation with them. And the way that they do that is with our book. So if the goal of your book is to encourage, to motivate, to inspire, to deliver hope, one of the ways that you give that a huge boost is by becoming a speaker. I am not a believer that everyone can get over their fears and always want to be in front of a live stage. I know it's not for everyone, but all of us can become some type of a speaker. We can become a podcast guest and really, use that. I consider that a speaking opportunity. We can do virtual events. We can do small group events, but we owe it to the story that we've lived. We owe it to the work that we've put into producing the book, to give it its opportunity to do its work. And we do that when we step on stage and allow people to connect with us in a meaningful way, and then want to take that inspiration with them through our book.
And I was thinking of it right now, but when you do a podcast, that might be a good baby step onto a stage, because you're not seen, you're only heard.
Right.
So when you're on stage, you've got both things to deal with. You've got the voice, but then you've got the whole I'm being seen.
Right.
And a podcast is you only have voice.
Right. It's
You're
more
not seen. So
that podcast is, I call it, kind of an intimate conversation that others get to hear, but that you never get to see. So, very often, a podcast might be, the host might record the podcast over a Zoom call. So you'll see each other, but it's a conversation that the two of you are having. And when the episode finally releases, then all these people that you will never have to see actually get to hear this very intimate conversation that you've had with the host. I love podcasts because they also have the benefit of longevity. When we're on a stage, may or may not be recorded, may or may not have some video component to it. But a podcast, a host is producing episodes regularly. And as people discover their podcast, you find a show that you really like, the first thing you want to do is binge all the episodes.
yeah,
And so your episode has the potential to have a lot of longevity to it.
that's awesome. And we've recently partnered with a PR company. And so for our marketing packages at Square Tree, we've now included that in as that podcasting piece. So they pitch to other podcasters to get our authors on their shows as a first step onto stages. So I really like that you said that. So
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being
I
on,
love
and
this.
thanks, Amanda, for co-hosting with me as always. So we just
Yes.
really appreciate great tips to walk away with. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you
Thank
so much, Amanda, Sherry. Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. And I'm, cheering and praying and just encouraging just all of these authors. I can't wait to see all the work that you produce.
Oh, thanks.
Yes,
Bye.
thank you.
Till next
Bye.
time.
Take care.